My name is Charles Thomas Kickett. I was born Charles Thomas Hayden in 1953 in Calabarin, 9 miles away from the centre of the universe, which is a place called Lifeline. That's my hometown, my traditional country. And I remember I was 5 years old. I wasn't going to school then. Before I went to school, I was at home on the Doodlekine Reserve playing. Then Mum said, "Oh, we got to go into Calabarin." So didn't say what for, but Granny Cliff Humphreys had a little old truck. So he took us in on the back of his truck into Calabarin. And when we got there, they left me. And the kids, we were playing in the shade. And I didn't know because my two older sisters and my older brother, they were in school. I didn't know that the native welfare got them out of school. So they all took us all to Calabarin. And I was sitting there for a little while playing, and then all of a sudden I saw this crowd come out of this building across the road from where I was. I saw my mum and dad, they were with them, and police, and I didn't know who the others were. Well, now I know they were native welfare, and I'm not sure who the rest of them were. But it was a little crowd, and they was coming towards us, and they started to grab my brothers and sisters and put them in a van. I got a bit worried, a bit scared. So I went to Dad, and I was hanging on to Dad's leg. And because all the kids, all the other 6 of them were, no, I shouldn't say 6, 5 of them were in the van, and this native welfare guy kept trying to grab me, and I'd scream and run around Dad. I'd be screaming and running around Dad. And, I look up at Mum and Dad, they just standing with their head down. And I was confused. I didn't know what was going on. So I kept running away from this native welfare guy. And Dad, he just lost it. He ran over and he picked up a piece of iron pipe, and he came back and he hit the police constable right across the head like that. Blood just went everywhere. And he turned on the native welfare guy, and it was like in slow motion. I was watching his pipe coming down I was expecting to hit him on the head. Middle of the head, I think. But then my mum, she punched him in the stomach, and he bent over, and actually saved his life, because the pipe hit him across the shoulder instead of on the top of the head. Smashed all his shoulder. And but Dad sort of came to his senses. He threw the pipe away, and then they handcuffed him, and they dragged us and watched them drag him across the road, because the police station was across the road. And I know now that that place that they came out of was the courthouse just up the road from the police station. So when they dragged him across the road to the police station, all the cells was like little dog kennels at the back. So they dragged him and they got him to the thing, and they threw him head first in the cell. And I thought, wow. He had his hands handcuffed around his back, so he just he fell flat on his face when they threw him in there. So they didn't care. They didn't really care about anything. for me, they didn't care about us because they was tearing us away from our parents and our family. But we went on this, after a while they took us on this long trip and we ended up in Perth on the corner of Bennett and Royal Street in East Perth. The place was called Bennett House. It was like a halfway house for what the welfare used for people to coming in and out of the missions and whatever. So we stayed there overnight. They locked us in a room, and the windows was a bit high, and I tried climbing up to the window to see where we look out to see. I couldn't climb up, nothing. But we didn't have anything to eat that night. Next morning, I don't think we even had breakfast. They just put us in the van next morning, and we went on another trip, long trip, because the cars they weren't very fast, so it made the trip seem that much longer. We thought it was a long way, hours and we ended up in a place called Roland's Mission, down on the Collie River, down south. And I thought, wow. When I got out, I looked at all these big hills all around, all these big trees, just thick timber in the middle of bush. It was scary for me. I was only a little fellow, wasn't old enough to go to school. So then all these wedge dwellers come and they took us, my sisters, they separated my two sisters and took them over in one direction, and then they separated us brothers, and my little brothers was taken out further down, dormitories around there further down, and I thought I was lucky I was able to stay with my older brother in the senior boys dormitory it was, even though I was only 5. But later on I think they moved me down to the junior boys for a little while. But we were there for a while. Don't ask me. Not sure how long, but we, I think it was about 4 or 5 years before Mum and Dad could get us out. What happened is, my older brother, they let us go home for school holidays once. And when we went home, my older brother, he started working with my grandfather. So they ended up, they took us back after the holidays, took us back to the mission. So I don't know, I remember Mum and Dad taking us back to the mission, but they said they couldn't take my older brother back because he was working. So they took my youngest brother, only newborn baby, took off Mum, and she was still breastfeeding him. And they took him to the mission, and when he got to the mission, we never seen him once in the mission at all. He was in like where they kept all the babies down in the corner of the mission. But I see photos of him now when he's about two years old. Wow, never seen him before that. But when we got to the mission, I used to sit down here. For meal time, we had to go to this big dining hall. Everybody went to the dining hall for meals. So when my younger brothers used to have to come past me to where we were and go to the dining hall. So I used to sit down in the green grass and wait for my two brothers to come past me. So when they come along, they'd come and sit in the grass, and the three of us sit there, and I put my arms around them, and we'd just cry. We'd be crying for home and crying for mum and dad, and we didn't worry about going for a feed, to eat. Then some of the bigger kids come and got us. They come and got us and took us for a meal, you know. And I thought, but that used to happen. That happened like, I don't know for how long, a few weeks before we sort of settled down in the mission best we could. But mission life wasn't easy. We weren't allowed to see our sisters. They were there's a road up the middle of the mission, and girls were on one side and the boys were on the other side. We weren't allowed to cross the road. So they kept us separate. And we got hidings. Sometimes, well, I don't know what we got our hidings for. If we wet the bed, we got a hiding. You know, and there was a lot of bedwetting in the mission because it wasn't a thing that happened. It happened because we were, I suppose, more to do with a psychological thing. You know, they mentally upset us, and those are some of the reactions that happen. And a lot of the kids wet the bed, and they tried to change us change our diets. So we sometimes we used to have salt, then they took salt away from us, and so they tried changing our diets all around, thinking that it was going to stop us from wetting the bed, but it wasn't our diet. It wasn't anything to do with that. It was more to do with it's up here, psychological, you know. So yeah, we didn't have it easy. Sometimes when we get away from, we have a little bit of a free time, we get away from the missionaries and people who are supposed to look after us, and we'd go down the river and in the hot times, go down and enjoy ourselves down the river, catching cobbler and marrons and we call them little minnows, little fish and mussels, freshwater mussels. We caught all those, and we used to eat them because we never got fed really that good. It was if you wanted to lose weight, you go to the mission. You lose weight. That's the way it was. You couldn't get fat on the mission food. We had to work. We had to work in the orchards, in the veggie patch. We had to work in the paddocks. We had to do work in the dairies and feed the pigs and the chooks. We did all the work around the mission. I don't remember seeing the missionaries doing any work really at all, unless it was driving a tractor or a truck. But any physical work, can't remember them doing it. We did all the physical work. I remember we were in we had our own like little chain of workers when they picked the fruit. The big boys went out and they picked all the fruit off the trees and they brought them in, and then they went through the grater, and the girls grated the fruit, and they put it in different things, separate containers, and us boys, the little ones, the little boys, we had a cloth where we polished the fruit. We polished the fruit nice and clean, and then we wrapped it in pretty paper, and then we packed them in boxes. When we finished packing them in boxes, the big boys come along, put the tops on them and nail them down and take them away. So we had that, and the Rollins Mission had the biggest grapefruit orchard in the southern hemisphere. Not so much the milk, but the cream we got off the milk went straight into ice cream factory in Brunswick Junction. Hardly ever tasted butter. Hardly ever had ice cream. I think we had ice cream, twice in a year. I can remember. If you wasn't quick enough, you missed out anyway, because they'd get a box of ice creams from the ice cream factory, and when they bring them back, they just put them outside the door at the kitchen, and all the kids just run for ice creams. So if you're too slow, you got nothing. So maybe some kids never tasted ice cream, but all the veggies, all the meals we had came from what we grew, we harvested. I don't think they ever bought anything. Even the butter was made. We'd go into our dining hall, and we'd just get the bare essentials, like have our meals. The only bread we got was half a slice of bread and butter, one slice of bread and jam, and one slice of bread and honey, no butter on them. So we were starving for butter. And we look up the front and we see the missionaries' table was just packed with butter and cream and all the different kinds of fruit, and they had everything. We had barely nothing. So mission life wasn't like home. We never got any TLC. TLC is the tender, loving care that our parents gave us. Never got it. Some of the missionaries fell in love with some of the kids, and they favoured them, but a lot of the kids missed out. Some of the kids went there as little babies, and they were kicked out when they were old enough, 16 to 18. They got kicked out, told to go down, you can't stay here anymore. And a lot of them used to go down and camp under the bridge down the road from the mission, and they'd come back to the mission to get something to eat, but they didn't know where to go because they didn't know their parents, they didn't know where they come from. So I thought it was the worst thing that ever happened to our kids. You know, they could have at least said, well, this is where we picked you up from, this is the name of your parents, this is all your family, you can, and this is a ticket to take you on a train or bus or whatever to that place. Or they could have took them, you know, but there was nothing like that. They were just told to walk down the road and go. But yeah, remember one of the guys went down the road. He stayed under the bridge for a while. He didn't know where his family come from. He ended up joining the army. When I went to Vietnam, got sprayed down with that Agent Orange. He came back, and I remember him living in Kwinana, where I live. He was living there for a while, but he died. He died because he had that Agent Orange. He was sick, but he only died very young too. So a lot of our men that went to war, especially to Vietnam, they died young, too young. But yeah, My mum and dad had to work hard to get us out of the mission. They pretty much told them they had to do three things to get us out of the mission. First thing they had to do is they had to get married in a white fellas church because they weren't married. So all us kids, we under our mum's name. So they got married in 1963, and then the other thing they had to do is they had to have a house to live in. We had our little house built on the reserve, Dillicon Reserve, but apparently that wasn't good enough. So Dad, he met this bloke. His name was old Tom Roberts. He had a farm out at New Carney, and he told Dad he can have a permanent job on the farm, and that's the third thing he had to have, is a permanent job. Seasonal work wasn't good enough, so he had to have this permanent job. So he got the permanent job on the farm, and the farmer, old Tom Roberts, started to build him a new brick and tile home on the farm. And in the meantime, he built with new corrugated iron. He built us a tin house similar to the one we had on the reserve. Worse than the one we had on the reserve because it was cold and hot in the summer and cold in the winter. But our little one on the reserve was real nice and cosy. So those things Mum and Dad did, and they got us out, and we went from the mission out to the farm on New Carney, and we travelled by bus. I started school in the mission, went to all Aboriginal school in the mission, and then when I got out, we had to go on a bus to Meriden to school. And I remember first time I went to school, I was standing around the corner, just peeping around the corner at all these white kids, thinking, because it was strange for me to see all these white kids, you know. I only used to seeing all Aboriginal kids at school, so I was a bit scared to go and mix with them. But then we moved from Meriden back to Dillicon, and I did the same at Dillicon. I was just standing around the corner, peeping around the corner at these kids. Then there's one boy come over and started talking to me, and he was a farmer's son, and he's the same age, or I think I'm a year older than him, but we became good mates, and he looked after me. When we had to travel to other schools for sport and athletics and stuff. We didn't have a ride, so he said to me, "You come with me." He said, "Mum and Dad take us." So I jumped in his big flash car, and we used to go to Querding and Tamman and York Khan, all the schools around us. We used to go to, and they used to take me. And when I remember going to Querding and got sort of halfway there, and I got car sick because I was not used to riding in a car. So his old mum said, "Go on, Russell, you take him out." They pull up take him for a walk down the road. See how he go. So he'd walk with me down the road till I started feeling better, and then we jump back in the car and go again. But they were very patient and caring, you know. I thought, wow, I didn't think my experience with whitefellas was they weren't that caring for us, you know. So it was a big shock to me that people, they were nice white people. So today that bloke, he's still my best mate. He lives down in Bustleton, and every time I go down there, I'll go around and have a cup of tea with him, sit for a few hours just yarning. But we catch up all the time, so much as we can. But Lifeline was a beautiful little town. We knew everybody, everybody knew us, and it was like one big family, really. Because I remember this old bloke in Lifeline. He used to, if he seen us down the street, hanging around the shops, he'd kick us up the backside and say, "Go on, go home, get along home." And we always thought he was a cheeky old fellow, you know, cheeky old wadjala. And but unknown to us, he was a cousin to my grandfather, because my great grandfather was an old white man, old Tom Hayden. Yeah, so that was good. That was good. But Mum and Dad got us out of the mission, but the thing was a bit late, because we already been damaged. I can only speak for me. I know my brothers and sisters copped the same sort of stuff, and we got hidings, we got physical abuse, we got psychological abuse, and we got sexual abuse. And it's not good, because for me, I tried to put all that behind me, you know, because my mates used to say, my Wodjbella mates, and just forget all that and move on. And then one day I seen them marching for Anzac, and they'd be saying, "Lest we forget." Oh, they're being hypocrites. They're not forgetting all that, and they want me to forget what happened to us. We can't, because they're wounds. They're very raw, painful wounds. So we can't forget those. They never gave us any counselling. They gave us nothing, no treatment for what they put us through. So we had to just suffer, and we did. So when I came down to Perth after I worked on farms and the water supply and the CBH, and wherever I could get a job, I worked. Then I hurt my back, and so I couldn't do much physical work. So I thought we'll move. So we moved from country down to the city, down to Kwinana, because it's still like bush. So when we got there, I started to look for jobs that was easier for me to do. So I got a job in welfare, and I worked there for 3.5 years until I got burnt out. But I was dealing with kids with same issues I had, same issues I was living with, that I'd never had any healing for, you know, never had any treatment for. So I didn't know how to handle it. So I ended up, I didn't want to leave the job, so I ended up, one girl that I worked with, she applied and went into the police force. So I said, "Oh, she can do it, I can do it." So I applied, and as soon as they saw me, they said, "You go away and lose 20 kilos. Because I was, and then, so I was determined to lose 20 kilos. So I started running, I kept running, I ran 20 kilos off. It didn't take long. Then I went back to them, as soon as they saw me, they said, "You got the job." So I joined the police force, 1988, and I worked up till 98 before they retired me. But I ended up having 3 mini strokes and 2 fits and I nearly died. That's why I was going to resign, but they wouldn't let me resign. They retired me, which for me it was a big help financially. It helped me a bit. But the reason why, I think one of the main reasons why I went to the brink of suicide while I was in the police force, because what I was experiencing as a welfare officer, I thought I was getting away from it. And when I got into the police force, I found out that the police force was very similar to welfare. It was a big welfare situation, and I was still dealing with all the clients that I was dealing with in welfare, and they had the same issues I had. So one day I didn't go to work. I got dressed for work, but the wife had just went down to the shop, and I had a firearm, and I just I picked the firearm up, and I was just ready to pull the trigger. I was thinking all my problems might stop, but somehow my teaching and my teaching and learning of how our life is so precious, that stopped me. And because I started to think about my family and my kids, my wife, and so I just threw the gun down on the bed and left it. I walked out of home. The wife came home, and all she found was the gun on the bed, and she didn't know where I was because I walked down the road, and I was walking down this busy road called Thomas Road, walking down these big trucks just whizzing past me, and I kept out, and the only thought I had in my mind is one step to the left and it'd be over. And I was fighting that. I kept fighting the thought of suicide. Oh, it was a battle. And but I kept walking, and then all of a sudden my daughter, my stepdaughter, pulled up, and she said, Dad, I'll take you home. I said, no, I can't go back home. I can't go there. Because I knew I had that rifle there, so I didn't want to go back home. So I just kept walking down the road. She said, I'll get help for you. And then it was just like that. My work colleagues was there driving alongside me, and they pulled up. They had to come, our office was in Perth. So I hate to think how fast they were travelling down the freeway. I think the freeway's still going down. But anyway, yeah, they driving alongside of me, and then they pulled up, and they physically had to put me in the car. Then they took me into Perth, our office in Perth, Central Police Station, and I sat in front of my sergeant. I was absolutely broken. And he said to me, you go and see a psychologist. I said, no, I'm not going to see a psychologist. They for mad people, I'm not mad. And then he knew that I wasn't going to go to see a psychologist. He said, well, okay. He said, I'm giving you an order now. It's an order. So I had to obey the order. So I think, got to go. So I went along, and I'm glad it was a lady. I didn't know, because before that, the problems I had, I tried to approach my family. I've got a big family, and I tried to approach them, and I couldn't. It would come up, everything would come up here, and it was like something stopping it from coming out, and I couldn't talk to him about my issues, my problems, and but this lady, she just started to talk to me casually, just talk to me. She sort of made me feel relaxed, and I started talking to her. Then slowly she sort of got into the conversation. Then she got me talking, and it was like she taught me to cry, because I grew up under two cultures, our Nyunga culture and the Wajbala culture. Both cultures taught me that men should never show pain, men should never cry. And I didn't. And I wouldn't show pain. I was my old dad used the phrase tough as nails. That's what we had to be, tough as nails. So we wouldn't cry, wouldn't show pain. But this time I spent with this lady, I started to cry, and I thought I'd never stop crying after that. And I started talking about all this rubbish, all the stuff that was in my system, that was in here, and it all started to come out like vomit. And it just kept coming. Every time I slowed down, she'd like press another button or like ask another question or say something, and until all this stuff come out of my system. And I talked about it all. I brought it all out, and about the abuse and stuff, that we went through. I brought it all out, and it was like, wow, this big heavy weight lifted off me, and I felt so good, felt different. So I thought, well, if it can happen to me, it can happen to others. It's been a long time. I've been suppressing it a long time, many years, suppressing it. Since I was a 5-year-old kid, I've been suppressing it, And I thought, well, hopefully a lot of other people will get out some help too. So I thought then that counselling would be the greatest thing that our people could ever get, because I don't think any of us even knew what counselling was about before that. I never heard of anyone going to counselling. When my dad after he was put in jail and served his time, police kept coming back and hounding him and locking him up for anything. But when they put him in jail, they put him in a place called Heathcote Mental Asylum, and what they did is they tortured him, and they called it shock treatment, and they ruined all his nerves. He just shook every time, and he couldn't make noises around him, So they ruined my dad's life. But they kept coming back and hounding him, and they charged him in Doodlekine at one time they charged him Doodlekine, South Doodlekine Road. They charged him for obscene language, and they took him before 2 JPs. The evidence they brought before the 2 JPs was the only people that heard him swear was 2 police officers and a flock of cockatoos. So, and the 2 JPs gave him 6 months in Fremantle prison, and he came down to Fremantle, the big prison in Fremantle, and after a while he got it back into court. After he nearly served the 6 months, he got it back into court, and the only question the magistrate asked was, why is this man in prison? The maximum penalty for swearing on High Street, Fremantle in those days was £2 fine. £2 fine? I think £2 fine equals $4. He never ever been compensated for that. Never. They never ever said sorry for that, you know. But I worked in welfare, I worked in police, and people ask me why. I grew up hating welfare and police, but I thought if I could go in there, work in there, I could have one foot in the door, at least I might be able to help my people. And that was the main reason I went and worked for welfare and went and worked in the police force. And I worked for my people. I worked with my people. I was a union rep for all the Aboriginal police statewide. I also worked with my people. I've done the cultural awareness program to police officers in the metropolitan area, all the police officers in the metropolitan area. Took me over 12 months, me and a team from the Aboriginal police relations. We did that, and just after that I had the fits and strokes. But I don't think I even got a pat on the back for that. Today I think we've changed the police force. I think we've changed welfare. You know, I grew up under the thing of being called flora and fauna. I wasn't classed as a human being. And we lived on what they call the native reserve. They still got native reserves, but for flora and fauna. But that's for us too. Okay? So we're still there. I think they still treat us as flora and fauna to a point, but it's a sad affair when it comes to Aboriginal people. And we're trying to educate the rest of Australia. We tell our stories, and we tell the things that happen to us. We talk about them, because the government don't. The government don't implement them into schools so that they can listen. Government still teach in the schools about Captain Cook. And Captain Cook was the guy that started all the problems for Aboriginal people here in Australia, because he didn't do the right thing in the first instance. He didn't do, like he told a lie and saying this land was, no people lived in this land. It was terra nullius, which is no people lived in this land. And yet there was hundreds and thousands and probably millions of Aboriginal people lived here until they got here and massacred a lot of them. I think it's like just chipping away at a mountain. We're knocking a little bit off. Yep. We're getting there slowly. Yep. But if only the government would just admit their wrongdoings and start doing what's right for all peoples, you know. So they try to talk about reconciliation. How can they talk about reconciliation when reconciliation means going back to a good relationship we had before? We never ever had one, so we can't go back. So there's a couple of organisations I've been able to get them to change it to conciliation. Not reconciliation, conciliation. Not rap, but cap. Conciliation, we can keep moving forward to a good relationship.